Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on Level Up Law, where we are leveling up your legal knowledge on the different areas of law that we handle here at South Carolina Legal Services. I'm Susan Ingalls, Senior Staff Attorney with South Carolina Legal Services, and I'll be the moderator of the webinar today, along with our producer, Kenneth Elliott from our IT department. Okay, tax time is coming, and today we are joined by SCLS attorney Fred File. Fred is the director of our low-income taxpayer clinic here at South Carolina Legal Services. Today, Fred will be sharing information on two really important areas of tax and what is going on with them currently. So if you are wondering about whether you're entitled to an economic impact payment or an earned income tax credit, stay tuned for some very helpful information. Just remember the webcast is being recorded and we'll post it on our YouTube channel later this week, along with the slides that Fred will be using today, so no need to take notes. And remember, as always, this is not legal advice, but just general information for the public. You should always consult with an attorney for any specific legal issues that you have. At the end of Fred's presentation today, we'll provide some information on how to apply for our free legal assistance here at Legal Services and how to access our other information and resources. You'll be in listen-only mode today as attendees, but be sure to put any questions that you have in the question box. We'd love to answer those for you if we can. As time allows, Fred will provide some information to answer your questions, just general information. Again, thanks so much for joining us today, and Fred, take it away.
All right, thank you, Susie. I appreciate the introduction. As Susie said, I'm the Low-Income Taxpayer Clinic Director, and our organization assists low-income taxpayers with any type of issue, from dealing with an IRS audit or any type of issue really that you have with the IRS. We will put up information about how to apply for services if you do have a federal income tax issue at the end of the program. So there's two topics that I'm going to discuss today. First is the economic impact payment, also known as the stimulus payment, and the second will be the earned income tax credit. The first topic is the stimulus, or the economic impact payment, and the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, the CARES Act, allows refundable credit for 2020 for eligible individuals to help with financial difficulties COVID-19 pandemic has caused. For all qualifying, to qualify, you generally have to be a U.S. citizen or a U.S. resident alien. You will receive an economic impact payment or stimulus payment in the amount of $1,200 for an individual, $2,400 for joint return filers, if you do file a joint return and are not a dependent of another taxpayer, and you have Social Security number that's valid for employment, and your adjusted gross income, AGI, does not exceed $150,000 if married and filing joint, $112,500 if you're filing as head of household, or $75,000 for eligible individuals using any other filing status. Once you hit that particular threshold, your payments will be reduced by 5% of the amount by which your adjusted gross income exceeds the applicable threshold above. I do want to make note that this is regarding the initial economic impact payment, the initial stimulus payment, not the one that has just passed the House and Senate. That has not been signed by the president yet, although it is, they are saying that he will sign the new stimulus payment, but this is for the initial payment. In order to be eligible, so if you are not eligible, there are a few ways that you are not eligible. Someone who may be claimed as a dependent on another's tax return cannot receive the economic impact payment. If you don't have a Social Security number that is valid for employment, you're also not eligible. And if you're not a resident, if you're a non-resident alien, you're also ineligible. Also, if a deceased individual is not eligible for the payment, or an estate or trust cannot claim the payment for a deceased individual. So there has been issues that the IRS is experiencing with getting these payments out. Most people have either received it automatically because they have filed the 2018 or 2019 tax return. Others have filed through the IRS non-filer portal. That is for people who don't receive, who don't have taxable income and aren't required to file a tax return. So there are a lot of people who did not receive the economic impact payment. And the deadline to file for what they call the advanced economic impact payment, which is what everyone has received in 2020, there is a way to claim that for on your 2020 return. So the deadline for the advance payment has expired, but you can still apply for the initial stimulus payment by filing a 2020 tax return in the upcoming tax year. So it's a little bit different. So if you are eligible for the economic impact payment and didn't receive it, the recovery rebate credit is authorized by the CARES Act, and any eligible individual who did not receive the full amount of the recovery rebate as an advance payment, also known as the economic impact payment, can claim the recovery rebate credit on a 2020 Form 1040 or 2020 Form 1040 SR, which is just the 1040 SR is just it's designed for seniors, so it's basically the same form. Disabled adults, Social Security, VA benefit, and railroad retirement recipients who are claimed as dependent on 2019 returns by someone else did not receive the payment. The person claiming them did not receive a child credit of $500 if they were over the age of 17. And in order to get that stimulus payment, it's best to file a 2020 income tax return, even if you're not required to do so. The additional $500 for eligible minor dependents who has never been claimed before as a dependent or were claimed by someone else without your consent. That has also been an issue. There's been numerous issues when people have tried to file their tax return to get the credit, or on the non-filer portal, they didn't receive it because the child was claimed by someone else. Also, the IRS had a lot of issues with people trying to claim their own children. They had a glitch in the system where they would issue the $1,200 economic impact payment to the adult, but they did not issue the $500 for dependent child. And then also there are some other issues, as the minor dependents must meet the economic impact payment IRS qualifying child requirements. And in order to claim the child, if you still are entitled to claim the child, file your 2020 income tax return, even if you're not required to do so, in order to get the recovery rebate credit in 2021, if you didn't receive it in 2020. And you should also be aware that the IRS can always audit a return, and you would need to provide supporting documentation. Individuals that have not been required to file a tax return because they have no income, file a 2020 income tax return anyway to get the credit. Again, with this new stimulus package that hasn't been signed, they are actually basing it on the 2019 tax returns. So if you haven't filed the 2019 tax return, you should do so anyway. You should also file your back tax returns if you haven't filed in previous years, and you're required to. So now we'll move on to the qualifying child requirements in order to get the additional $500 payment. The requirements are that the relationship must be your child, that is your son, daughter, a stepchild, eligible foster children, brother, sister, stepbrother, stepsister, half brother, half sister, or descendants of any of them, for example, a grandchild, niece or nephew. The child must be under the age of 17 at the end of the taxable year. Dependents of individuals who are eligible for the payment. The child is claimed as a dependent on 2018 or 2019 tax returns, or entered on the non-filer enter payment info here tool. That was the non-filer tool that the IRS is no longer active on the IRS. I don't know if they are going to have another non-filer tool for 2020, but you can still file a tax return even if you're not required to, just claiming zero income. The child must be a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or a U.S. resident alien. Child must have lived with the individual parent or grandparent for more than half of the tax year, the calendar year. Child must not provide over half of their own support for the tax year. And child must have an eligible Social Security number or adoption taxpayer identification number issued before July 15, 2020. And so the CARES Act, the really, really good thing about the stimulus payment has to do with the fact that the IRS, for the first time in its history, did not allowed everyone to be eligible for the payment and did not offset the economic impact payment, with the exception of child support. They didn't apply it to back taxes, so there was a lot of people who wouldn't file a tax return because they're like, well, it's only going to my back taxes anyway, and there's no reason for me to file. I'm not going to get the money. Well, in this particular case, the only reason the IRS the federal government would have offset any economic impact payment has to do with child support. If you're not current on your child support and there's an order, they would have captured that and applied it to the child support debt. But other than that, there are no other reasons, no other federal offsets that could take place. So if you had a back payment and if you were overpaid in Social Security disability, for example, they would not apply it to your overpayment amount. And that is a huge thing. And that wasn't even done with the stimulus payments that occurred back in 2000, God, it was 7, when we were in the recession. Now, another issue that we've been seeing is when husband and wife file tax returns together and the economic impact payment for both of them are applied to one of the parents' back child support for a child outside of the marriage that was born prior to their marriage. Well, there is a way for the person not liable for child support to get their portion of the economic impact payment or stimulus payment back, and that is to file an injured spouse claim with your tax return. So it's called an IRS Form 8379 Injured Spouse Allocation, and you file it with your married filing joint return. And this should prevent the IRS from capturing the person who is not liable for child support. They should be able to receive their own economic impact payment. If you didn't file the 8379 with your 2019 tax return and the IRS still captured your economic impact payment, the IRS is in the process of correcting it. If you didn't, you should still always just file it afterwards. You don't have to wait to file with your 2020. It will take a while for them to process it, and the IRS has addressed an issue that they had with these types of returns. They were not issuing the injured spouse portion of it back to the parent or the person who was not liable for the child support. So that if you did file the 8379 with your 2019 returns, it is taking them a while, and they are in the process of correcting the error. Eventually you will receive the stimulus, but you should still file the 8379 with your 2020 married filing joint returns if you feel that your stimulus would be taken and applied to your spouse's child support debt. Okay, so that is really the end of the economic impact payment portion, or the stimulus payment. Again, the new stimulus, again, it hasn't been put into law just yet, but that should be coming out relatively soon once the president signs the bill. And they are saying right now that they're trying to get those payments out starting on the 30th of December. So, Susie, do we have any questions, or should I roll on to the next topic?
Fred, you laid out that information so perfectly that we don't have any questions from anybody, but I do encourage those that are listening to feel free to put your questions in the question box here, so we can answer any questions at the end of the presentation. But we're good to go now.
All right, thank you, Susie. So the next topic I'm going to discuss is the earned income tax credit. And the earned income tax credit is designed sort of as a social welfare system. Government realizes that it's expensive to raise children, and for some people, especially low-income people, they need some help. So the government decided that it would be best to do that in the form of tax credits. And it is a very, very helpful tool for low income people who have children who really, they use that money to supplement their income. So it is a credit that can be claimed by working people with low to moderate income, and in order to qualify, you must file a tax return and meet certain requirements. If you qualify, the earned income tax credit either reduces the amount of tax you owe or may increase your refund. The basic qualifications are that if you're claiming the earned income credit for a child or a disabled adult child or relative, that person has to have a social security number that is valid for employment. The person has to have earned income, which is earned income is more or less wages, or if you're self-employed, any income from your self-employment. It does not include social security or retirement income from a 401k. You cannot file a form 2555 or 2555EZ, which has to do with investment income. And you have to meet the income and investment income limits. The IRS income and investment limits change every year. So depending upon the year that you're trying to claim this, the qualifications, the income qualifications change it a little bit. You cannot file married filing separate. That eliminates your right to claim the earned income tax credit even if you have a qualifying child. And the child cannot be a qualifying child of another person. So generally, the person must be a US citizen or resident alien for the entire year. Okay, so to claim the earned income tax credit with a qualifying child, the qualifying child must pass all of the following tests: relationship, age, residency, and joint return. Relationship is that they must be your child or grandchild, or can be a sibling that you're caring for, and a disabled relative. Must be under the age of 17 at the end of the tax year, or they can be any age if they're permanently and totally disabled. Permanently and totally disabled is doesn't necessarily mean that someone receives Social Security disability income, but that is a very, very, it can be a very, very useful supporting factor. And the child must live with you for at least half of the year, at least 6 months and 1 day. And the child or person that you're claiming the credit for cannot have filed a married filing joint return unless the child and that spouse did not have a filing requirement and filed only to claim a refund. Essentially, they're more or less saying that if your child's married and they're living with you, but they have income, then you wouldn't be considered a qualifying child of your parent. So let's see now. So for separated people, there is a lot of issues about who gets to claim the child for what. It is very much, for people who are getting divorced with children, it is a huge issue on who can claim the child. Now, only one person can receive the earned income tax credit, but there are some times where you don't know who is eligible. If you have divorced parents, it is possible for the child to stay with each parent for 6 months. And when that's the case, only one can still claim the child. So there are some tiebreaker rules. Most notable is that whoever has more income gets to claim the child. And so if you have 2 parents, one person makes $20,000, the other person makes $30,000, child stayed with each of them for 6 months. The person who made more, or in this case, the person who made $30,000, has the right to claim the child for the earned income credit. Now, if the person who has higher income has income that excludes them from receiving the earned income credit, the other person still cannot claim the child because the tiebreaker rule would go to the parent who has the most income. And if that person has more income than the income qualifications allow, then that doesn't give the other parent the right to claim the child. There are a lot of other tie-breaking rules that I can spend an entire day talking about, but that is the general rule as far as parents who are splitting children equally. Now, if the IRS audits, they are going to request all supporting documentation to prove that the child, the eligible child, lived with you. They meet the age requirement, residency requirement, and they will send out a audit document saying we're reviewing your tax returns, and then these 2 forms that are on my screen right now, they will be sent to you, and it outlines what documentation you need to provide to them. Keep in mind, a lot of people look at these and will only send one item. You want to send as much supporting documentation as you possibly can. The IRS might not accept the one piece of information. So if you have doctor's bills and school records, don't just send one or the other, send them both. Send as much as you can. It will prove that you can claim the child, and it will also prove it will also speed up the audit process as well. And I think that is all I really have for the earned income tax credit. If you do receive a letter like this is something that we can help with. And I will turn it over to Susie.
Fred, there are a couple of questions.
Perfect.
On the economic impact payment, if you owed money on your 2019 return but didn't yet get the stimulus payment, will the payment that you're entitled to recover this year with the recovery form, will that go toward the tax that you owe from the year before?
No.
So that'd be
No,
separate.
that's a great question, great point. No, the recovery rebate credit will be issued regardless of if you owe back taxes.
Okay. And then on the EITC, what are the consequences of claiming the EITC and it turns out you weren't eligible for it?
Okay, so worst case scenario would be that the IRS issues the refund, then they audit you, and then you are unable to prove it and you go through all the process. You will have to pay back the earned income credit. Your filing status may also be changed. So you would have to pay it back. There would be interest and penalties involved in it. And then you would be in collections with the IRS. So you can remedy that by either setting up a payment plan. It's possible to submit an offer in compromise to try to see if you can reduce the debt and pay in one lump sum. But yeah, they would not only require you to pay it back, but interest and penalties would be charged. And you could also receive a bar from claiming the earned income tax credit in the future. Sometimes it's a 3-year bar. For more serious repeat offenders, it can go up to 10 years that you can't claim the earned income credit. Even if you have a qualifying child and it's not the same child, they will ban you from being able to obtain the credit. That's the worst case scenario. Sometimes the IRS will audit and freeze your refund or issue a portion of it, but they'll hold up the earned income credit until the audit is complete. In that case, the balance due probably would not, well, it may not exist at all, but if you do owe something, it would be kind of probably minimal. But that's, yeah, that is the consequence. And if you don't negotiate, if you don't contact the IRS to take care of that, then the IRS can offset future refunds. They can also garnish wages, bank accounts, offset your state refund, things of that nature. But so long, and they can file a lien if the balance is generally over $10,000.
So bottom line, make sure to go through all these eligibility requirements that you've laid out before claiming that credit, right?
Absolutely. You should always, every year, keep really important documents for your children on hand, just so it's really easy just to grab the documentation and fax it or send it in to them. And especially like school records, doctor's bills, that's a great piece of evidence. Health insurance, proof of health insurance, school records especially. But yes, definitely make sure that you qualify for it, that you're eligible, or there can be some pretty serious ramifications.
Okay, well, it looks like we do have one question. The husband passed away last year. The surviving spouse received his portion of the economic impact payment. Does the person have to return his portion of the payment to the IRS, or can they keep it?
They have to, if they passed away in 2019, they have to return it back. And they're on the IRS website, there's an address to send that back to, or you could do that. I'm not positive, the forms haven't come out yet, but I'm pretty sure that you can do that on your tax return as well.
Well, it looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. I want to thank you, Fred File, for a very thorough and informative presentation on economic impact payments and the earned income tax credit. Great information. And thanks so much to all of you who joined us today. We really appreciate so much your interest in our Level Up Law programming. So please go to our YouTube channel, and if there's subjects that you're interested in hearing more about, just please make comments, thumbs up if you find this valuable, and so forth. So I do want to remind you that Level Up Law is a series of free live webcasts. We do it every Tuesday at noon, and we educate the public on some of the most common legal issues that we see here at South Carolina Legal Services. And all of the episodes can be found there on our YouTube channel. So definitely go there if you found this helpful. Be sure to like and share the broadcast. If you subscribe to our channel and sign up for the alerts, you'll get that notification when we post each new episode. But we do invite you to listen in live every Tuesday. Now, if you have an issue and you need legal assistance and can't afford a lawyer, you may be eligible for our free legal representation. On the screen here is our contact information and how to apply. I also want to remind you that you can apply online, although the great staff at our intake office is there Monday through Thursday, 9 to 6, standing by. You can also apply online, and we actually have a Level Up Law episode on our YouTube playlist that walks you through tips on that online application process. So you can check that out there. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram to get that notification each week, and for other information that we post as well, of course. And next week, we'll be talking about the rules of the road on auto repossession, a subject of great interest to many folks. Thanks for tuning in to Level Up Law today. We look forward to having you back with us next week. And that concludes today's webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Susie.